Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to give you an update on the war between Ukraine and Russia and what I see happening, because there is a lot that's still about to transpire. It's happening very quickly, and I guarantee you the world is going to look like an entirely different place by the end of this year. But before I go into it, I always want to remind everyone, sign up for my free newsletter if you want to receive all of my predictions delivered to your email address. Go to my website, galacticcenter.org, and sign up for my free newsletter and notice all the classes that I have going on right now. Plus, take note of my beautiful spiritual jewelry. And remember, if you want to study Vedic astrology with me, I have an amazing university, University of Vedic Astrology.com. So with that, let's go into these charts that are going to reveal a lot more than we knew before. So first, let's put up the chart for Ukraine, because this chart is so telling, I believe, because of where its natal moon is placed. The moon sits at 28 degrees of Capricorn. And that is the degree that Saturn and Mars come together in Capricorn. I've been talking about this conjunction for a long, long time because it's intense. Let me just say, Saturn in Capricorn is extraordinarily strong. And Mars in Capricorn is off the chart strong, because not only is it exalted there, but that's its degree of exaltation. And I have never seen a Saturn-Mars conjunction produce positive results. It's always about setbacks, delays, and confrontation. Because Saturn and Mars are arch enemies. They do not like each other. Saturn wants to stop and go slow. Mars wants to go 100 miles an hour. Together they clash. And Mars deals with anger and war. Bring them together, something's up. And, you know, many times I've seen events with transiting planets that's when they're within a degree orb. It doesn't have to be just on the day that it's exact. And rarely it is, to be perfectly honest with you. But it's like those energies together for a while around that time produces the effects of those two planets clashing together. And for it to be on the moon of this chart is so sensitive. It is unbelievable, to be honest with you. And looking at the moon in this chart, well, in this chart it's in the first house. Regardless what house it's in, with that conjunction on the moon, it's powerful. But the moon does rule in this chart the seventh house. And the seventh house represents opponents in a country's chart. So the opponent is attacking like never before at this time. And another thing I took note of is the fact that by next August 1st, when we have that other conjunction that gives us a big warning, is when we have Uranus, Rahu, and Mars come together for a very unexpected, explosive event. So thinking about that, that will occur at 24 degrees of Aries. So if you plug it into this chart, Mars, Uranus, and Rahu, it's in the fourth house. Fourth house deals with the homeland, things happening on the land of the country. And this is a violent attack. And this could be very explosive. And I know I've said before, I don't think that there's such a thing as nuclear war coming. But you know what? Looking at this chart, I might have to rethink that. I think it is possible. I don't want it to be possible, so my emotions lead me to say, I don't think it's going to happen. But these charts, I have to stand back and say it is definitely possible. Something horrendous that is more than what we've seen before is going to happen. So the next charts I think I'm going to put up is going to be looking at the chart of Vladimir Putin and Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. So let's put up these charts and see what we can see from this. Because there's a lot that I'm seeing here. And remember, the degree that I'm always watching in charts, whether I'm doing somebody's birth chart reading or looking at countries, any chart I look at, I look for 24 degrees in the chart. And that would be because that's where that conjunction occurs, at 24 degrees of Aries. So pulling up, let's look at Zelensky's chart and look exactly where his moon sits. It sits at 24 degrees of Cancer. And this means that Mars is going to be squaring that moon exactly when this hellacious event or configuration occurs. So Zelensky needs to be totally aware and on guard, because this could be something more devastating than what's been going on before. And yes, this whole war broke out while we've had this Saturn-Mars, and Saturn was at 24 degrees of Capricorn opposed that natal moon. So his moon at 24 degrees of Cancer is being triggered first at the onset of this war, and then it's going to be triggered even more so as Mars comes together with Uranus and Rahu and squares that moon. So his natal moon is going to be at the midpoint of Rahu and Ketu. That is giant. Rahu being at 24 degrees of Aries means Ketu's at 24 degrees of Libra, and his moon sits right at the center. The moon is the most personal point in a chart. And for a world leader, this can also represent the people. Yes, the people. And Saturn is going to be going back and forth to that 24 degree marking. As a matter of fact, in October looks like there could be a world war. I mean, I know this sounds, I never thought I'd be saying anything like this, really. But the reason why I say that is because Saturn's going to go back to 24 degrees in October. And also October 30th, Mars is going to go retrograde. Mars goes retrograde every 2 years, but every time it does, it brings out the worst in people. Why? Because Mars is anger, Mars is frustration, Mars is war. Now, of course, it goes retrograde every 2 years and we do not have war. But this particular time, it is different because Mars is going to be stationing at 1 degree of Gemini. And actually, that conjoins Mars in the United States chart. I don't have to put that chart up, just trust me with that one. Mars in the United States will have a return and it's going to go retrograde. What happens when a planet goes retrograde is it brings out things from the past, and it brings out things that have been repressed and suppressed. And a Mars retrograde brings out what? Anger and war. And we have this whole crisis happening. And Saturn in October will go back to 24 degrees. And not only does it go back there, but it stands still because it stations. What does that mean? When a planet is changing from retrograde to direct, it goes into a period where it pretty much stands still. And that's going to be in October. And this is after August. This event with Mars, Uranus, and Rahu at 24 degrees. So I watch those degree markings. And looking at Zelensky's chart, his moon gets hit dramatically. And Mars will pretty much be stationing on his Jupiter. He has to be careful. This is not going to be over with. Yes, we'll think it's over with probably for a time, maybe in May or June, but it's not. I think Putin is revving up more and more. Let's put up Vladimir Putin's chart to see what I could be talking about with this. So looking at Vladimir Putin's chart, I noticed that he has Rahu at 26 degrees of Capricorn. I mean, that's within 2 degrees. I always say give it a 3-degree orb and it's exact. 3 degrees is the orb that makes it exact to me. So his Rahu sits at 26 Capricorn. Of course, K2's at 26 degrees of Cancer. And guess what? Putin's K2 sits on Zelensky's moon. What is K2? Karma and losses and the past. They have major karma together, in case you didn't realize that. But looking at Putin's chart, Putin also has Jupiter at 26 degrees of Aries, where that Mars, Uranus, Rahu will be on his Jupiter, and it's in the 7th house, which means, yes, his opponents are going to be very strong. So we're in for a huge fight. And it doesn't look very good for either of these guys. And I noticed Putin has his Saturn at 24 degrees of Virgo. And this is actually, it's an aspect that I dread the most, where the Mars, Uranus, and Rahu will be 24 degrees of Aries. It is forming a quincunx, which is what I call a 6-8 or an 8-6 relationship to that natal Saturn. And those relationships really do represent 6th house accidents and struggles, and the 8th house can be death. So this is like major trouble with where the planets are going. Now, I also noticed looking at Putin's chart, he has what's forming a yod with where Neptune and Jupiter are transiting right now at 29 degrees. Jupiter and Neptune conjoin together around the 13th of April. Jupiter, Neptune at 29 degrees of Aquarius right before they move into Pisces. And they're activating a yod in his chart where his Mercury sits at 29 degrees of Virgo and his Jupiter sits at 29 degrees of Cancer. That is where Jupiter and Neptune form a quincunx to Mercury and a quincunx to Pluto. And what is Pluto? Pluto deals with atomic energy. That's what was really, I was trying to avoid seeing but I can't avoid it anymore. And furthermore, so that's going to be happening in April. So something dramatic could happen in April. If not, it's definitely happening by August to October, when Saturn rolls back to cross over his Rahu. His Rahu sits at 26 degrees of Capricorn, and transiting Saturn, which is just transited over that degree mark, is due to come back in August, and then again around the end of the year in January. Well, actually, I think it's going to be in November, but regardless, let's just say Saturn is within this range of his Rahu. As soon as it comes back in July into Capricorn, around the third week of July, we're going to have Saturn go back into Capricorn, and it will remain there till the end of the year, till early January. So during that time, July to the end of the year, there is not going to be much peace. There is going to be a ridiculous amount of violence. Lots of violence. And yes, this war is not over. We have a long haul to go. And I also saw from other world leaders, particularly Xi Jinping, that he has planets tied up with where Mars is going to be turning retrograde. It's his sun. His sun sits exactly where Mars is going to go retrograde. And also Kamala Harris. So we have got some insane times ahead of us. Kamala Harris's ascendant in Rahu sit where Mars is going to turn retrograde. She's got a heavy load and things on her plate. Karmic destiny is coming. She was chosen, I got to tell you, by the fact that she has Rahu on her ascendant, 1 degree of Gemini where Mars stations. This is the craziest combination I have ever seen. It's so dramatic. And that's what's going to be happening. And one last thing I want to point out, showing the Ukraine chart. If you will notice, Pluto sits at 24 degrees of Libra in the 10th house of this country's chart. And come around that time that we have the Rahu, Mars, Uranus conjunction in Aries, it will be exactly in the 4th house of this chart, representing the homeland of Ukraine. Plus, it's aspecting Pluto in the 10th. Pluto is atomic energy. So there's a couple of things that I think this could actually mean. Pluto is nuclear energy, but at the same time, Neptune with Jupiter in the last degree of Aquarius conjunct the fixed star Markab, which represents sorrow. This is around April 13th. This can represent poisons. And this could be some kind of biological warfare as well. So to make things worse, this world is falling apart. People are angry. People are frustrated everywhere with all of these transits. And here's what I say to all of this. Believe this or not, everything happens for a reason. And there has to be some destruction before the clearing. And I think this is what it's all dealing with. The world is at odds. And those 3 dates that I keep talking about, the first one, first few days in April, then the middle of April, then August 1st, and around that time, because the end of July through October, it's all happening. So we've got to really do some serious prayer work for this planet and the consciousness of people and the fear. People have been so consumed with fear and anger all together. It all created this havoc in the world, and peace needs to come. So pray for peace. Pray for conscious awareness and for people to evolve to a point where they never kill each other again. That's what we have to concentrate on. But the movement of the planets, we'll see. It could be too late, but let's pray it's not. I do believe we can reverse things. But the way things have already been rolling, the momentum here is going to be very hard to stop. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information on me, you would like to learn Vedic astrology, first go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. And if you would like to learn more about my school, go to my university website, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.